Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
Number 91.
Number 91.
The
Sounding the Shallows.
Sounding the Shallows. I never thought a year ago we'd be saying the word sounding the shallows so many times.
No.
Well, there we are. It's been another very difficult week, hasn't it? A lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of trouble.
Terrible
for
trouble.
People
Terrible darkness.
In Europe.
And I think the whole of the world, it has a reflection of it. I think the pandemic created a world rather than just a country, and suddenly that's been smashed right in the middle of it, hasn't it, by what's happened.
Well, there is a similarity really in the way that this has suddenly crashed into everybody's lives in a way that we didn't expect, and it's still doing that. It's a very difficult thing to handle, really.
There's so many images, aren't there, and so much horror, so many things that we don't really want to face. But I don't know about you, Adrian. I think I was lying in bed this morning thinking, I've got to somehow stay tuned into this, because I'm lying in a comfy bed and people are struggling as they're struggling there. And the only thing I can do, well, there may be things I can do, but the only thing I can do right now, I was thinking as I was lying in bed, is to at least find out what's going on, be part of understanding what's really going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so many different messages. I think one of the things I felt really upset about was the idea that the Russian people were just hearing Putin's version.
Yeah. That really annoys me. I mean, I have a personal thing about people not telling the truth. It drives me mad. And I was looking at that verse that's been very important to us over the years, isn't it? John 8:32, where Jesus says the truth will set you free, which can also apparently, as I learned years ago, actually be translated perhaps more accurately, reality will set you free.
Well, I gather that's the Greek, that actually is what it means in Greek, that the word is reality, not truth.
I find it kind of comforting, really. But this week, as you said, I mean, the whole world's been wrestling with an absolute flood of public statements, some of them by leaders of European countries, and it's becoming more and more difficult to accept, for me anyway, any announcement made from Russia, where I gather it's now more or less illegal to dispute or even argue with the party line. And some of the claims about the historical origins seem very odd indeed. There was a very good program on Radio 4 actually taking apart those ideas. Yeah.
Do you know what struck me? All during the whole business of the pandemic and vaccination, we were saying that those people who were tuning into the mainstream news, the news you could get from reputable sources like the BBC, I suppose, but they were hearing the daily briefings. They were understanding what really was going on. The people who were only online were picking up all sorts of conspiracy theories and all the rest of it, and going down some very strange roads indeed to justify, for example, not having the vaccination or whatever. Well, now you've got a situation where the older generation of Russia only listens to television, and of course television is directly
state-controlled,
and the younger people are searching for the truth by looking online. Until that's cut off, they're desperate to understand what is really going on.
And it's rather the same as it was with Trump, isn't it? And he was president. When the truth stops being a real moral imperative, everything worth valuing just gets iced over, and we trip and skid and stumble to understand what's going on. And it is very frustrating.
Well, it's frustrating because, yes, how do you say, but that isn't true to people who are locked into another country a long way away and believing what they believe. It is their truth. It is so hard, really. But the truth Jesus was talking about wasn't an abstract truth, was it? It was his truth. In fact, it was him, really.
you meant the fundamental truth that would give you freedom.
That will give you freedom.
Was him, and not what? Not philosophical conjectures.
No,
or,
not something that you could say, well, that's your truth and this is my truth. Jesus was saying, I am the truth. And in fact, he said, didn't he, you're no longer going to be slaves. That's the word used to set slaves free. And later on he says, I don't call you slaves, I call you friends. So we are talking about something really quite different from any truth that's hammered through into people's heads as being the answer, and everything else that the world is saying is false.
I think it's been a problem for Christianity since Christ was there, hasn't it? That it's sometimes easier to go and look for methods and theories and ways of living, because, I mean, the fact is, even if you say, we're going to go, say a group of people, a church, a religion, say we're going to go for total truth and reality, we're not going to be caught up in this business of only saying half the truth, but that's at one extreme no easier to handle, especially got something like a church, and the Christian church, which as we've often said, is not and never is going to be an exact science. So you can't pin it down, just as you can't pin a person down. And we've been married for 52 years, and I still can't pin you down.
Oh, good.
I'd like to pin you down.
That's good. That's
Mind
good.
you, I think I'll reword that. I'd like to. Yeah, you know what I mean. I had a discussion about a friend this week about, for instance, hearing from God. And now there's a thought, right? Now, within the Christian church, there's a broad belief that people can hear from God.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And what interests me, I think we've talked about everything before, haven't we? But what interests me is that we've moved since I was 16, which was back in the.
It's when you were 16, yes.
When I was 16, we've gone through various phases. So we say now, I sense what God is saying. I sense, or I feel. Some of these are kind of defensive ways of talking about it, because you're not saying he did say it, but you are saying it's influenced my life so much that I'm going to do something as a result of it. And then there's I believe, he said. And there are those, and I totally understand this, people who have daily reading, and if something comes up in their Bible reading, then that to them is or can be a very clear indicator of what God is saying to them. Or there are people who simply say, God has told me. And if you look back at the Old Testament and quite a bit of the New Testament, actually, people were much straighter and more forthright with that, because perhaps they were more confident about it. I don't know. I really don't know.
They also had long periods, though, when they didn't hear from God at all.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years sometimes.
Yeah.
It's impossible to imagine for Christians in Ukraine at the moment. They're not going to be doing anything like this, are they? They're not going to be thinking sort of waftingly, well, I have a sort of feeling that. You know, we were talking, weren't we, about favourite verses, things you hang on to. And often it is during difficult times that you think about those verses, the ones that have kind of held you safe. They are a truth to you that has never disappeared. I know there's one for you.
Well, it's one that was actually given to me by somebody years ago who died not long after he gave me a Bible with the words written in the front, and it's a verse from Job, and it's Job looking back over to the good old days, as he sort of calls them, and remembering about speaking to people. He's obviously a very good speaker for God, and one of the things he says is, when I smiled at them, they could scarcely believe it. And I think the concept that when things break up, when you go wrong, when you feel lost, you are not being looked at in a punitive way, but that God is smiling is. I've found very helpful over the years. Really have.
And at the moment, I'm saying we're bombarded by images. I'm sure that applies to to everyone who's listening to this. And maybe in the middle of all the horror, you get this extraordinary moments of, I mean, it's been mainly in Poland where they've been filming it, but the smile. And it may not be somebody who even believes in God, but love comes from God, and that love in their faces, that welcome, that hospitality, that as these people who've been queuing and coping and leaving behind fathers and brothers and husbands and, you know, and suddenly there's somebody with a cup of tea and a smile and a welcome, and sometimes more than that, people saying, come on, you're coming home with me, and you can have a bath and you can have some hot soup. And I mean, that is when this person smiles at them, they can scarcely believe it, really.
It rather reflects, doesn't it, the what was said by that famous evangelical Oscar Wilde, who writing about Jesus very interestingly in De Profundis, his letter from prison, said the thing that distinguished Jesus was his imagination. So that when he heard about a dead child, he saw a live child. Now, whether you want to call that imagination or not, I don't know. But these people in Poland are imagining being cold and lost and tired and hungry, and saying, I'm not going to let them be the way I am. I'm going to do or the way I imagine I would be. I'm going to do something for them.
And it's not just Poland. I'm only saying that because that's mainly where in the UK we're getting our images from, isn't it? I know that but Moldova and various other people, and I think more and more there is going to be that sense of anger at this distortion of truth, that people should be allowed to be free and should be allowed to live their lives. You know, I was thinking again, Adrian, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks or so ago, that phrase that young African on Community at Scargill said, when the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. And these people getting trampled, getting torn.
Same every time, isn't it?
Every single time. Every time. Yeah. It's interesting that in the middle of it, you know, we were talking about those graces last week. It seems like a long time ago, where we were able to share quite fun graces. But one of them that we didn't share sort of sums up that need at the moment to give thanks for, you know, whether it is for those people it's a cup of tea, whether we do need to really give thanks for the comfort of our bed, or for the fact that we don't have somebody close to us in that situation, if that is our situation. And
you're going to read it?
I will. I'll read some of it. And it's from somebody who is a shepherdess. And I think what I loved about it wasn't a fun grace as such. It just was so warm about somebody who works for them, with them. And it's asking really for thanking God for what this man produces and for who he is. So she says, we thank you for the potatoes set and harvested by our faithful worker Dave, who managed courageously to continue planting the potatoes with the machine that's been in our family for 60 years, despite the fact that his left hand was trapped and mangled in the rotating bit that you put the seed potatoes in until we got to the end of the row. And we pray he'll continue to work for us and not sue us for every penny we have, and enjoy his plate piled high with the produce he's helped to bring to this table. And we thank you for the warming fire with the logs cut from the tree that fell on Dave's farm cottage. So it is very funny.
Yes.
Thankfully not harming him or his mother, but only rendering the kitchen and bathroom useless and cutting off the electricity. Dave and his mother Irene are gratefully camping in the end of the chicken shed, so we ask you'll keep the rats away from their end, as you kept the lions away from Daniel in the lion's den all those years ago. And although I know it was a bit silly and funny, there was a real love and warmth and asking for a blessing on somebody close. And I think that's all we can really...
She sends us some great things, doesn't she?
She does.
Oh, shepherdess.
She does. Yeah, she does.
Mm.
But you know, I was thinking, I mean, I've just come back from the community cafe where I help on a Thursday, and I was just thinking, wherever you are, you can be that welcome.
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah. And but going back to the business of what you know about God speaking and all that, I'm sure God does speak in various ways, but I think it's fairly clear that what most people want, whether it's people in Ukraine or anywhere else or here, is to know they're loved. If you know you have people in your life who love you, it makes all the difference. And I think it's great that those people, and there was a photo on the front of the Times, wasn't there? A little girl clinging on to somebody who was looking after her, with agony in her eyes and pain in her eyes and abject fear. And I just said to God when I saw this picture, can you find someone who will bring a smile back to her face and let her know that somebody somewhere really loves her?
Yeah.
And that may be the case anyway, but to know that God loves us. And it's interesting talking to people who we've met over the last few years. That often is the gap in them, the fear that maybe God doesn't love them. And how do you experience that? And I mean, if people want to write to us, I would love to hear their ideas of that. I mean, how do you perceive and receive the love of God? What makes that a reality in you? And I don't mean that all the people in Ukraine should become Christians and realise God love. I mean, I don't know, probably a good thing, but
and a lot are. But that's
yes, they
not
are.
what we're talking about, is it?
Yeah. But to know inside that smile is always there, and there are all kinds of logical anomalies that go with that. But that I do think God cares for them, and I think it's wonderful to see that being acted out through the gifts and the kindness of other people there. It's really lovely.
And, maybe we have to toughen up a bit, Adrian. That what you said about this maybe, possibly, that we have to toughen up a little bit about the truth. Jesus said, I am the truth. And that there is such a thing as evil. There is such a thing as deep wrong. And as part of our free world, really face what we can do to bring that smile of God to people, because it's not really an option, is it?
No, it's not an option. It's probably the most important thing in the world. It's quite hard. I find it more and more hard to communicate, oddly enough. I mean, when I was 16, I was sitting in cafes preaching at people and driving them mad, because I got converted and thought I might as well just go and do Tunbridge Wells while I was there.
Sort out Tunbridge Wells. No, I find myself fascinated to see what effect it will have if I keep my mouth shut more than anything. I'm waiting to see what will happen. So it is worth praying, I have to say. I've got lots I'd like to say about prayer, but when it comes to Ukraine, to just put your good wishes and goodwill into the stream of the love of God and say, I want to join with you in being part of loving these people in whatever way is possible. Can you say that again? Just what you just said.
Yeah, I think if you add your will and your wishes to the stream of the love of God towards those people in
I
Ukraine,
think that's such a good way of putting it, and that is what I think is happening. Obviously with Christians, with prayer, and in other ways with other people, part of that stream, that allowing that the love of God. He so loved the world, and I know we've said it before, but knowing that God is love, and setting his world free to behave how they will. I don't know, it's not...
I get a bit lost there, but yes.
Well, we are a little bit lost, aren't we? Which is why we have to hang on to what we know.
And if people are interested, I mean, my view of all the truth in the church is that there's only one testimony being you talking about your experience of God or whatever. There's only one testimony worth hearing, and that's the one that is true.
Absolutely.
And we need to hear more about failure and struggle and sudden joy and sudden wonderful things happening, all of those things. Because however ragged and uncertain it may sound, as we kind of edge our way towards the source of the light, the truth is what holds us. We do not have to flap around or tell lies or tell half-truths.
No.
We can tell the truth. And we do pray for Europe, and we do pray for an awareness in people of the smile of God that can really disarm and heal. And at the moment, having seen that picture, most of all, I pray for the children.
Yeah, of course
I pray
we do.
for the children who don't understand what on earth is going on, why these planes are smashing their country to pieces. I pray for them, and I'll go on doing that.
Oh my goodness, I wonder what the news will be next week, Adrian. But in the meantime,
just hope it stops.
Yeah, and we always love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.